8,000 square meters, the total area of the garden. In the garden, the visitors can see a small zoo, animals and birds in caves, artificial pools and an interesting botanical garden, while on the right, now you can see the Zapion Mansion, one of the main exhibition hall of the city and one of the most beautiful neoclassical buildings that were built in the city in the 19th century. This building, the architect of this building was Ernst Schiller, an architect from Bavaria who worked in Athens in the time of King Otto. It's not only the main exhibition hall of the city, this building is used for international conferences, scientific lectures and press conferences. One of our favorite buildings in the city. We'll see some more later on. Meanwhile, we'll have a stop here. We'll pass across from the traffic light, so we'll visit the Temple of Zeus, the remains of the Temple of Zeus. Okay, at the entrance I'm gonna give you tickets. You have to keep the tickets because we'll use the same tickets for our entrance to the Acropolis. Columns have been preserved of its original 100 forms. The outer colonnades of the temple were consisted of 104 columns, 3 rows of 8 columns in front, 3 rows of 8 columns at the back, 2 rows of 20 columns at each side. And this is the Corinthian order of architecture. You see that the capital of the column, the upper part of the column, is decorated with leaves leaning outwards, indicating the leaves of a certain plant named acanthus. There is a sad story about this order of architecture. It is said that one of the famous architects had lost his daughter. So he went every day to the cemetery carrying flowers to the grave of his daughter. And one day among the graves he saw a basket from which leaves of acanthus, a certain plant, came out. And he was inspired and created this capital, which looks like a basket from which leaves of acanthus come out. On the Acropolis Hill today, we'll see the other 2 orders, the Doric and the Ionic. Just to give you an idea, the Doric column is the simple column. The Ionic column is decorated with volutes. You can remember the horns of a bull, let's say. And the Corinthian is decorated with leaves. The construction of the temple was really adventurous. The Athenians started the works in the 6th century before Christ. And the temple was a work of the tyrant. So when the tyranny fell in Athens, the Athenians didn't wish to continue the works. They stopped the works, and finally the works for the temple were continued in the Hellenistic period, in the time of Antiochus, king of Syria, 2nd century before Christ. He sent the money for the continuation of the works, and he assigned the plans to an architect named Kossuth. So they worked for 12 years, but before finishing the roof, Antiochus died, the sponsor died, and they stopped again. And finally the temple was finished in the Roman period, in the time of the Roman Emperor Hadrian, that is in the 2nd century AD, after Christ. And that's why the Athenians, Hadrian, permit me to say that he was the Roman Emperor who spent his life not in Rome, but in Athens and in Egypt. A great admirer of the Greek civilization, of the ancient Greek civilization, and a benefactor of the city, a donator. He built in the city an aqueduct which was in use up to 1930. From the 2nd century AD, the aqueduct was in use up to 1930, and he built a library. Remains of this huge library can be seen in the area of Plaza, close to Monastiraki Square, one of the historical squares of the city, and you can see them. The ticket I gave you is valid for the visit of different archaeological sites. So I'll point out the sites, but remember that you can visit also Hadrian's Library, the remains of Hadrian's Library in Monastiraki Square, one of the squares of the city. So the Athenians, in honor of the Roman Emperor, built an arch, Hadrian's Arch or Hadrian's Gate, and we believe that this arch, we'll see that again in our tour in the city from the bus, this arch separated the old classical quarter of the city from its new Roman section. In the Roman period, the city of Athens was expanded to the east, so more people in the classical quarter of the city from its new Roman section. At the same time, it used to be the monumental entrance to the Temple of Zeus, as you can see. At my meters, if you are acquainted with the city, you have to multiply by 3. I have to tell you that the columns of the Parthenon on the Acropolis Hill reach, the height of them reaches the 10 meters. So this temple was much bigger. And imagine please that the main hall of the temple, which has not been preserved, was consisted of 3 parts. A front porch named pronaos. Naos in Greek means temple. The temple was the house of the god. So in the cella, in the main hall of the temple, the statue of the god stood, usually on a marble base. Here we have found the traces of the base of the statue of Zeus, but we have only information from the ancient writers about this statue. It has been lost. We know that it stood there, but later on it was lost and we don't know how anyway. Naos means temple. There was a front porch with 2 columns to support the roof, which was the entrance to the main hall, and this was known as pronaos, the front porch, the entrance to the main hall. Pronaos, naos, opistonaos was the back porch, again with 2 columns to support the roof, like a balcony you have to imagine, but there was no communication between the main hall and the back porch. Usually the back porch was the treasury of each sanctuary. And they kept there the money and the various precious offerings to the gods. And that's why there was a railing that secured the back porch. So the back porch was the treasury of its sanctuary. The temple was the house of the god. Usually the worship took place outside until the 4th century before Christ. From the 4th century before Christ onwards, the people could enter inside, admire at the statue, and took place in the rituals, let's say. The roof of the temple, you know, the main hall was surrounded usually by the outer colonnade, but also this construction had a roof, a double-pitched roof, and the roof was made of wooden beams and clay tiles, and that's why these roofs have not been preserved. In the best case, we can find some fragments of the clay tiles. So the sanctuary of Zeus was here. You see that it was surrounded by a princess wall. You saw the entrance, which was decorated with columns. Only the lower part of these columns can be seen. And in the area, the archaeologists have found also remains of a bathhouse, remains of an early Christian basilica, remains of houses and roads. And we have found also over there where the lady is, the lady with the backpack, we have an archaeological section where you can see remains of the long walls of the city. I've told you about the walls and the midst of this. Imagine please that the lower part of the walls of the city was made of stone. The upper masonry was a dry masonry, that is, it was made of solid bricks made of clay, dried out in the sun, and that's why the upper part of the walls has not been preserved. It was melted with the rains. Okay, have your free time, have your photos of the temple and the Acropolis, and come back to the bus at 1:45.